All right, so for this next project, the Marvelous Mugs, we first did some decorative tiles. And these decorative tiles had a bunch of different designs and textures on them. And so we are going to look at some prehistoric art that also has textures and different patterns on them. So, Neolithic. Does anyone here know what Neolithic means? Not yet? All right.
Ancient drawing. On the left hieroglyph.
Please raise your
Come on, you were
hands.
in the last one.
Please raise your hands.
Hieroglyph.
So, Neolithic is Stone Age. It's the end of the Stone Age.
Let's see.
Right at the time when people started farming and cultivating animals. So right at that time, peoples, it was about 12,000 years ago, started staying in one place for a longer period of time. They weren't nomads any longer. They weren't moving around from location to location, catching animals to eat them, or finding foods in just throughout the lands. They were starting to figure out how to create or how to plant and grow their own foods. So we're going to look at some old pottery throughout those times, and it's going to go from, let's see, what was it called? Neolithic. There's a formative Neolithic age, and that's kind of the first. It's 7,000 years old. It's the first time when the people started doing that. We're going to be focusing more on the end of the Neolithic period when people started making pottery. It wasn't until the end of the Stone Age that people started making pottery. So, 7,000-year-old pot from Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia is in central Iran. You can see it on the little globe there. And on here you can see they glazed this on, or they used minerals that created a different color when it was fired. We will be getting to that later, but these mugs you're going to be doing will use your carving and your additive and impression techniques. Question?
How did they fire the pots in the Stone Age?
In the Stone Age. So it was before the Stone Age. Well, it was during the Stone Age. But before this age, they were firing them in pits in the ground. They'd create a big bonfire. They'd put wood underneath, put their pots on, put wood on top, and then they'd light the whole thing up. And then they'd keep on adding wood throughout the day or for several days to get their pots entirely fired.
Whoa.
That was the first type of firing. Egypt, another 7,000 to 8,000 year old, no, 7,000 to 5,000, 6,000 year old pot. More pattern. Pretty neat pattern, I like those swirls. It's a common theme, common pattern. This one might be more like yours, where you're going to carve into it. And maybe you'll also add some texture with your glazes. This is Chinese. With these pots, we'll probably notice that most of these they have a pattern that is geometric in design. So we've got these triangles, or these straight lines, very geometric in design. And that was a style of art that was usually some of the first art ever created by peoples. When people started creating art, they did geometric styles of art. More Egypt. Again, geometric, but then they've got some animals included in this one. Some more animals, some sort of bird. Japanese, this one they used a lot of texture.
Oh, look, see.
You can still consider this geometric because of that design with straight lines. That's a pretty neat piece. Probably every single one of these pieces of pottery that we're looking at right now would be considered coil pots. You can make large pottery pretty quickly out of coils.
It's a coil pot.
We will learn about coil
My
pots
last
in the
name.
next. Chinese. This one might be getting a little bit away from geometric, but it still has those horizontal or those vertical lines or diagonal lines going upward. More Chinese, more geometric in form, more carving though. And if you look at this, they've got really interesting feet. Maybe your slab mud will have feet like that, depending on how you figure it out.
Are we making a coil pot or a slab mud?
Casey, please raise your hand. We are making slab mugs.
Oh, okay.
Japanese. So now that we're getting closer to today, this one is 4,000 to 3,000 years old. The design is starting to go away from geometric. It's starting to get more organic. Minoan. That's a pretty cool picture. And this is very organic in design. All of these leaves climbing up. Still, it's quite old, 3,600 years old. It's an old piece of pottery. So your pottery could potentially last 10,000 years.
Really?
Really?
It could last forever.
So can I go bury it in a field and like the next generation can find it?
Yep, totally could.
Heck yeah, I'm gonna do
If you
that.
put it out in outer space, it would last until it crashed into another planet.
Which would take hundreds of
It
billions
could take
of years.
billions of years.
Let's go. I'm gonna call NASA and have them bring up all my pots and jiggle.
Another Minoan. This is a really cool one with a lot of reductive carving done to it. And then some additive as well with the handles. Truscan. This one has just fine lines carved into it, but the form is really nice. It's a really elegant form. Roman, pretty cool. This one's only 2,100 years old.
How
So
is
it's
these
not
people so
nearly as
good?
old as the rest.
Did you watch it?
Now we move to the Americas. So people didn't get to America until about 10,000 years ago. And so they were still in gather-hunter mode for several thousand years. They didn't get into a lifestyle where they could stay in one place for long periods of time until many, many thousands of years later. And this is somewhat geometric, but it's also organic, so it's a little bit unique in its design. But if we move to an area of Brazil, there's a lot of geometric happening in here with organic. Again, Mayan. Not as old. This one's only 1,500 years old. And these people, they created large cities, some of the biggest cities in that area of North America.
The Mayans did?
Yeah, they had some really large ones. They had some huge temples as well. If we go into North America, the US, then it gets back down to that more basic idea. The further north you go is you kind of regress in time, or you regress in the complexity of art. So this is just simple lines, simple circles. It's well done, it looks awesome, but it's not quite as complex as some of those other works that we were just looking at. And this one's potentially only 800 to 1,200 years old. If we get into closer to our area, then it gets back to the geometric. The peoples in our area, they were gather-hunters or hunter-gatherers for a very long time before they started doing any type of pottery. Because this one's 800 years old as well. Anasazi, more geometric design. Puebloan,
That's it.
closer to home for us even.